Welcome to
Tamarindo Podcast.
Hosted by me, Brenda Gonzalez, a political nerd and nonprofit capacity builder.
And me, Ana Sheila Victorino, a queer well-being enthusiast and mindset coach. We are a Latinx empowerment podcast discussing politics, culture, and how to keep your calma with well-being practices and self-love.
Our mission is to use laughter and conversation to inform and inspire. For us, self-care and advocacy go hand in hand.
We want you to be your best you, so together we can build more inclusive communities.
Welcome to the show. Woo! Welcome to Tamarindo. This time it's a regular episode because Ana Sheila is back.
I am back. We are next to each other. We are vibing.
Our dog Frida is part of it.
Yes. Hola.
Y'all can't see it if you're podcasting only, but some of you might be seeing us on video. We're giving it a shot. We're giving it a shot.
All right. Our guest today is Mariel Buqué. She is a psychologist, intergenerational trauma expert, and the author of Break the Cycle, a book that focuses on healing wounds of intergenerational trauma. Pero before we get into that conversation, I want to know what's been up with you, Brenda. No nos hemos visto. We haven't seen each other in a few weeks. And then I'll share what I've been reflecting on as well.
Yes. So we are recording on Dia del Niño, Niñe, Niñas. And I thought it would be really fun to just ask you, Ana Sheila, I'm turning it right back at you. What would you tell your 10-year-old self?
Oh, my God. So many things. Pero the first thing that comes to mind is I would tell little Ana Sheila that she doesn't need to get more A's or win more awards or do anything else to be worthy of love. Because I think that as a little girl, I started getting a lot of accolades very young, and I started thinking that I always had to win things, get good grades, and I got really attached to that as a marker for love. And I've literally spent my 30s unlearning that. So that's probably the biggest thing that I would say. And then what else would I tell her? Well, actually, let me ask you, maybe we can bounce back. What's one thing that you would tell your little niña self?
I would tell her that in 30 years, she would be having so much fun putting together a really, really fun podcast and getting to hang out with Ana Sheila, getting to do cool things, and getting to connect with all of those listeners out there. It just really fills my heart to be part of this project. So I would say, yeah, stay loud because that te va a servir.
Oh, that's hella cute. Okay, can I share two more things really quick? Okay, well, the other things I would tell my little niña self is I would tell her that she can wear whatever the fuck she wants, and that doesn't define her gender, doesn't define anything, that you just get to wear what you want. I would tell her that. And the last thing I would tell her is I would tell her to keep writing and keep performing and doing all the things that she stopped doing because she got scared and shy.
Oh, un abracito to little Ana Sheila and to
know.
little Brendita.
Pero honestly, it really feels like a lot of us in our whatever age we are, but as adults, we are reconnecting with our little child self. Like so many of us are doing that work, and it's really beautiful to see other folks share their story, their journeys in that way as well.
Yeah, absolutely. That's why I wanted to make sure we mentioned it, even though y'all are listening to this a little after Dia del Niño, but really just the whole concept of thinking about your childhood self and con cariño y con compassion. So I think it's very thematic to,
totally.
to everything we're talking about.
Yeah, and I think little Brenda would be really proud of adult Brenda today. Because
I hope so.
Because I feel like, y'all, Brenda decides she's going to do something and she just does it. And then she she's just good at it.
No. But my mom's favorite expression, which I think is very great for all to be reminded of, is mejor pedir perdón que pedir permiso. So I live by that.
That is true. That is true. But wait, can I congratulate you can you talk about your audio pilot real quick? Have you talked about this?
Yeah, very quickly. Ana Sheila is doing her acting debut.
I'm a voice actor, y'all. I got my first credit. Thank you to Brenda. Talk about it.
Yeah, well, our good friend Cristina Igarivides and Annabelle from Latinx on the Rise, we collaborated on writing our own audio pilot. This started as a tweet. I literally tweeted, I want to write something. And Christina's like, let's do it. And I think a year later, because we kind of just did it whenever, whenever we could, we did write this pilot and we did get to record it, and hopefully it gets picked up. So everybody just put some positive energy out there, and then you get to hear Ana Sheila basically playing Ana Sheila on this really fun fiction audio pilot. So thanks for giving us that space to talk about that.
Yes, yes, yes. Okay, so can I share what I've been thinking about?
Sure. Yes, yes, yes.
Okay. So I've been thinking a lot about the power and the responsibility of words and language. And I know that on the last episode, that was a little bit of the theme as well,
Yes,
right?
for folks that didn't listen to it.
Yes.
We're like April Stress Awareness Month. May is Mental Health Awareness Month. These themes are often here on Tamarindo. So we explored the topic of therapy speak. So y'all listen to that episode so you can catch up. And if you already listened to it, I love that we're still continuing these conversations, speaking to therapists. It's always so helpful to hear from these amazing folks that are in this space. But yes.
Yeah, no, it was really just interesting because I feel like maybe a lot of us are thinking about this, about words, about language, about the power and the responsibility. And so I've been thinking about this in a few different ways. One way that I've been thinking about this is like, what energy, like the intentionality behind the words that I use. And I've talked about this before, but really one question that I like to ask myself is, what energy do you want to bring to anything that you're doing? And what role do the words that you choose to describe what you're doing play in that? Because words, again, I think they're really powerful. I think they're spells. And the words that we use can really make an impact on how we feel about something. So I like to use, and I've used this example before. I know Brenda knows it. I'm going to do it really quickly because I think it's always useful. A good, really quick example is the word should. Right. So I think when you say like, I should do something, it can add an element of like, now something feels like it's a chore. It can make you feel bad if you don't do it. And a lot of times these are things you actually want to do. So when you start using the word should, it takes away like the actual joy of like, maybe this is something you really want to do. So why don't you say, I want to do it, not I should do it. Right.
Yeah. Or I get to, right. That's your tip.
My other thing is like, yeah, I get to do this. And I like using that one in instances where maybe it's something that isn't that fun. Right.
So, I get to write my taxes. Dang it.
Oh no. Or for example, even sometimes like with the podcast and things like that, like not every part of what we do is fun.
It's
right.
a big labor of love, friends. Right. A lot of gets.
Working on the outline. But sometimes it's just because it can be a little bit tedious, but there is a joy in it. And we do get to do this. Like, it's beautiful that we get to do this, and just grounding it in that gratitude can make us bring a little bit back of the joy that there is in doing this, right?
Love that. Yeah, it's always a good reminder. Thank you for reminding us about that.
So being really thinking about what's the energy you want to bring to what you're doing, and how can you use the words to help with that. And the other way that I've been thinking a little bit about this is I've actually been studying Buddhism. I just like to learn about all the things, y'all. And they talk a lot about wise speech as being part of about like I think it's the eightfold path to enlightenment or something. So they talk about wise speech. Wise speech, they define it as truthful, beneficial, timely, not harsh, and not idle chatter. And so I've been thinking a lot about how can I be more wise with my speech. And some of the things that I've been thinking about is like, what gets in the way of us being more wise with our speech and so I've been thinking about like, is it for some of us, it's fear, it's distractions, it's like not being present. And another big piece is like old wounds that we're carrying that like sometimes we don't realize come into play in how we're speaking to others. So that's something I've been questioning about that. And I've also been thinking about this a lot because I just moved back to LA. And so I'm reconnecting with a lot of folks. I'm meeting new folks, and I'm also very busy. So like I'm thinking about how I can be really clear about what I need, what my needs are, what my capacity is, so that I don't cause harm.
Very good. And I'm so glad that you're back in LA, and I see that you're out there all the time meeting people. So you're getting to put this into practice in so many scenarios. I
am. And then, and I think I'll just close on this sort of reflection. We get to be careful with our speech as we talk about topics that are important, that are polarizing, that are potentially triggering. And a way that we get to do that is the more that we keep learning about things, right? So in this episode, we're going to talk with an intergenerational trauma expert. And I think it's important to start with, what is intergenerational trauma? What is trauma? Because we use a lot of these words, like you talked on this last episode. Like we're talking a lot about these topics, but we have to be really careful that we know what we're talking about. And how do we do that? Is we keep learning, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we do on this podcast. We unlearn, we learn, todos juntos.
Yes. So today we're going to talk to Dr. Mariel Buqué. We're going to talk about what intergenerational trauma is, its impact on our well-being, and how we can start to heal from it. And I think it's a really both informative and healing conversation and inspiring conversation. So let's get to that. This episode of Tamarindo is supported by Topo Chico Hard Seltzer. Today and every day at Tamarindo, we love to celebrate authenticity and the special qualities and experiences that empower us and set each of us apart. Something I'm proud of is how growing up as a queer Mexican immigrant has given me a broader perspective and an empathy toward different identities, experiences, and preferences. We're proud to partner with Topo Chico Hard Seltzer because they know that authenticity doesn't just appear out of nowhere. Authenticity is something deeply rooted within you that can take hard work and something that you get to celebrate each and every day. Topo Chico Hard Seltzer brings authenticity to the world of hard seltzers with 125 years of history and refreshing Mexican and Texan-inspired flavors to celebrate those who are siempre diferente. And I'm all about savory and sabroso, so I love the Topo Chico classic flavor with real lime juice and tequila flavor. And speaking of authentic, what I love even more is that it has real lime juice because we say putting limon on everything, so we can tell when it's real. It's refreshing, it's citrusy, tart, and I like to imagine myself on a beach in Oaxaca when I drink it because, ¿por qué no? But if y'all have that sweet tooth, there are so many other flavors that you can try. Experience a hard seltzer that's always diferente with Topo Chico Hard Seltzer. Go to topochicohardseltzerusa.com/tamarindo to find where you can get yours today. That's topochicohardseltzerusa.com/tamarindo. Flavored beer, TC Hard Seltzer Co., Milwaukee, Wisconsin. Celebrate responsibly. Dr. Mariel Buqué, thank you so much for joining us on Tamarindo today.
Ana Sheila, thank you so much for having me. It's such a pleasure.
Yeah, so I want to get right into it. So trauma, it's a term that it's getting thrown around a lot right now. And this is really great in some ways, right? Because not too long ago, we weren't talking about it as openly. We weren't exploring it. And we weren't seeking to heal from it the way that a lot of folks in our community are now, right? And then you throw in another topic that's talked about a lot in our community, intergenerational trauma. So I want to deep dive into all of this, how it's affecting us, what does it look like, how we can heal from it. But I think it's really important that we get really clear on how we use terms. I think there's a responsibility in that so that we don't misuse, cause harm, or spread misinformation. So I want to start with definitions. Can you share with folks what is trauma and then what is intergenerational trauma?
Ooh, yes, absolutely. So I love the backtracking into the terminology, which is really important when we're circulating terms that have clinical implications or that, have to do with healing. And trauma itself is the experience that we have of feeling like our emotional capacities are overwhelmed in reference to an event that actually created a threat in our lives. And more often than not, that threat is a threat to our existence, meaning that we felt that our life was in danger. There are different types of traumas. There are traumas that don't pose a danger to our lives, and they're known as everyday traumas. And those everyday traumas, when they accumulate, they can also have as much of an impact as a bigger, larger trauma that did threaten our lives. So we have the small traumas and the big traumas all taken together, whether they're chronic and small or large and one time, they can have an impact on our mental health, our emotional well-being that can tap us out and can make it so that we then, what we call it, is become kind of frozen in survival mode. Now, yeah, and if you have any questions on that, because I know that's already a lot, so we can unpack that even further, and I can get into intergenerational trauma beyond that as well.
Yeah, so let's get into intergenerational trauma. So what is that?
Intergenerational trauma is the only trauma that's handed down the family line, and it happens at the intersection of two modes of transmission, our biology and our psychology. Our biology is anything that is genetics, anything that is a part of our nervous system, and the ways in which stress and trauma happens in one generation, and it genetically, for lack of a better term, alters the genetic expressions that our parents have, which then, upon conception, those genetic expressions get transferred over to us inside of our mother's belly in the womb. The psychology part of it is everything that happens post-conception. If your mother's really stressed when she's still pregnant, those stress hormones are flooding through your bloodstream. There's all of those messages that you're getting that the world isn't safe already while you're still in the belly. Then you transition into being born, and maybe there's chaos in the home, and there's like a divorce, or there's turbulence, there's bullying that you experience in school, you have a bad breakup or a toxic relationship, and the world just keeps whirling, right? And after that, you have your own set of experiences of trauma. And the continuation of that is really what we start noticing, is the continuation of cycles of trauma. It's a person that is in trauma, genetically and biologically, they have that body that is in trauma, passing it on, creating an emotional vulnerability in their children then experiencing their own experiences that are really hard in the world, and then being the cycle keepers of trauma.
Wow, like that is so much. I think it's wild to me to think about it as being both biological, like it's literally being passed down biologically, and also the psychological component. I wasn't aware of both of those components going into intergenerational trauma. And so, I mean, I think it makes a lot more sense now when you think about why it's so hard to break from these cycles, right? Because there's so many factors that are going into staying in these cycles. So can you expand a little bit more on why we get stuck in these cycles, and why it's so hard to break from them?
Yeah, absolutely. So a large part of the reason why is because we're just not aware of the fact that we're in cycles anyways. We have so many trauma responses in our families and our communities that fly under the radar because they've been normalized and they've been passed on as culture, or they've been passed on as like, oh, that's the thing the familia does, like that's just how we are. When in reality, what they are trauma responses or unhealthy patterns that can be disrupted. So when we're not aware of it, when we literally cannot see that there is something in front of us that we can change and that we should change, we don't have an opportunity to do it. We literally don't have the tools, don't have opportunity, don't have knowledge. So a large part of the transmission happens because of lack of knowledge, resources, and access to trauma healing and trauma tools.
Right. I think that what you just said is so huge. And like the first step is really just the awareness that we are carrying this trauma, right? Having the tools to recognize it and be aware of what it looks like and what it feels like in our body and our behaviors, et cetera. Mm-hmm. What are some ways that folks can start to recognize and be aware of trauma behavior that they might be carrying?
This is where it gets to be, some of it can be very individualized, but some of it, are just common things that we all share. Some of the things that are a little bit easier to spot are emotion-based or in our bodies. So if our emotions are different, and typically we have a pretty cheery disposition, but we notice that, lately we're irritable or sad, or there's something that's going on that is making our world just feel different and gloomy, and that's an opportunity to identify or see if trauma has entered the picture. When it comes to intergenerational trauma, unfortunately, people are born or grow up with a lot of internal turmoil. And so there isn't a moment when they shift and all of a sudden they're now, in this space where they're sad or they're chronically irritable. That just happens to be something that is the general norm because they've been in survival mode for so long. So it can be a little bit harder for an individual that's in an intergenerational trauma cycle, but the same rules do apply when it comes to identifying emotions. Like, are you chronically sad, irritable, feeling empty? Like, are these like experiences that tend to be very much the prototype of your life. And now we add the other layer, which makes it intergenerational. Were any of your parents chronically sad, empty? Like, are we seeing the patterns that are intergenerational? That's the biggest marker of like us being able to see, okay, there are things that were happening in my home environment that now look like they're happening in my adult life. There's entirely too many similarities. It all doesn't feel good, right? Like I'm not at peace. So let me look at what's been happening and try and locate some patterns. This is why it can be helpful to work with someone like a healer or a therapist, right? Because they are a neutral party and they can really kind of point out things that we typically don't see. But these are things also that people can do on their own, or I guide people like through my book and other ways that I like facilitate healing, to really look within themselves at the places where they have the most discomfort. And there you can find a lot of the ways in which trauma has been reproduced. And then look at the intergenerational patterns. Who else was like this? Who else has a similar story in your family line? Who else in your community, right? Because this is also a communal kind of condition, meaning that sometimes there are entire communities that are in these experiences of intergenerational trauma, and we have to think about also the community aspect of it.
Yeah. So, I mean, I'm hearing, like you said, it can be very individual, but it starts with starting to be more curious and pay attention to yourself, explore yourself and your behaviors and your family's behaviors, and explore your situation with curiosity, and then adding ideally an expert to guide you through this exploration, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think this generation especially is doing a lot of disrupting of a lot of cultural values that we've identified as being toxic, right? Like maybe like the toxic masculinity that's embodied in like machismo, right? Like we are doing a lot of destigmatizing of the ways in which in our cultura, like people have been like operating from these machista kind of like perspectives and have machista oriented behaviors that can be very harmful. And that's an area where we could start thinking, you know what, like the ways that toxic masculinity has shown up in my family line has not been helpful or healthy for us. That's an area where I want to disrupt. Really, I want to disrupt it regardless of whatever, gender I embody, right? Like maybe I want to disrupt it by educating the people in my community, or if I share the gender of a man, then I want to disrupt it within myself, right? Like, and so we start the disruption even with the cultural things too, but it first starts with acknowledging the ways that we've embodied, some of those like traits and the ways that it flows through our family line.
That is so powerful, and I love that word, and that word disruption as a tool, right? For individual and collective healing, ultimately. That's really beautiful.
Absolutely.
And actually that made me think about, I'd love to learn a little bit of how you got into this work. What inspired your work? Was there a personal connection that brought you to it?
Yeah, there was both personal and professional. On the professional end, I kept hearing the same stories in the therapy room. People kept saying, well, my mother and my mother's mother, and that kept sounding the same. And I would even go into my clinic team meetings where when I worked at the hospital, we would have these meetings where we would have conversations about our cases. And every case, every person's story was like literally like the same. And I'm like, these are threads. Like, why are we not connecting these threads and having a more like profound understanding of what's really happening down these families and in these communities where trauma continues to be perpetuated? Like, there's something that can be disrupted here, and we're not really addressing that. We're just treating someone for chronic depression versus treating them for what is keeping the depression going in their family line, which is trauma. So that was like more of the professional piece where it kind of almost even grew out of a frustration of seeing my people in so much pain and feeling like there must be something else we could do. Like, this isn't this medical treatment, the standard of psychotherapy and what we're doing here doesn't seem to be working because people are not getting better. So it was my commitment to wanting to see my people feel better that really drove me to do this. But of course, I'm a Black Latina, I'm an immigrant to this nation, and I'm from a working class background. My family grew up in deep poverty. And so like all of those intersecting identities all came with their own sets of traumas and systemic traumas, interpersonal traumas. And it made my work feel very prominent in my home, because I started reflecting on all the pain that I had been experiencing growing up in poverty. And then I was like, my mom grew up in even deeper poverty than I did. My grandmother, even deeper poverty than that. And it just felt like again and again, we were in these cycles of pain because of the experiences that we were having down the poverty line. And no one was really identifying the fact that a systemic inequity like poverty could be contributing to the pain that was so prominent for us, or a systemic inequity like immigration and the 10-year separation that I had from my father as a result of immigration laws. Like we don't talk about the depth of trauma that exists in multiple generations within one family home because of these experiences. And so I really wanted to create the not only the language that can help us to feel more emotionally liberated from a lot of these pervasive traumas, but also the tools to help us to really extract them from our families, from our homes, and from our communities.
Yeah, I love that. You talked a little bit about starting with identification, with words, with tools, and how do you, what comes after that? Like, how can you fully break out of a cycle?
Mm-hmm. I like to think of it as you being able to remember a trauma, multiple traumas, or situations in life that feel heavy without them bringing you to your knees. Like having the experience of being able to remember something and tolerate the remembrance of it. Because trauma, what it does is that it freezes us and makes us run away emotionally even, right? Like our minds are like, no, I don't want to touch that. You avoid, you do all the things, right? But if you experience an event as tolerable and digestible because you've done the work, the healing work to be able to actually process it, or process the multiple events if they're chronic, then I experience that as enough of an emotional liberation from trauma so that we can say there's been a broken cycle. In addition to that, there are a lot of behaviors that are reflective of broken cycles, right? A lot of ways in which we can say this kind of behavior that has been running rampant through my family and my communities ends with me. I'm not going to teach my child that. And that's a cycle breaking behavior and process too. So it's both the emotional and the action of what we do. But I like to think of intergenerational trauma as also being, as you mentioned, and there's an element of the collective trauma that we experience, and the fact that it's also deep within our culture. So with intergenerational trauma, I also help people to feel the empowerment of being able to take action against the systems or policies or practices that continue to perpetuate trauma for them and their community, right? So I think that that's a really critical element of how we break cycles, is that we do it at the individual family level, we do it at the cultural level, right? And we do it at the systemic level. And then it's like a full system overhaul that allows a person to feel like I'm breaking cycles, but I'm also taking action so that these cycles can be broken on a larger scale. And we could each do our part, even if it's, something small and local, we can each do our part in being able to break the cycles on all three of these levels.
That part. So if I had a matraca right now, I would be spinning that around. I think that what you just said is so important, how important it is that we're doing it at the individual level. I think you said did you say family or community level?
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Family,
and then
community,
and the societal level, right?
Society. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That is so powerful. Matraca a thousand times to that. So Yeah, like whether, even if we ourselves are not experiencing a particular type of trauma, there's still so much that we can be doing with our platforms, right?
Yes.
Especially
yes,
when it
absolutely.
comes to what you talked about, how inequities end up affecting us at an individual community, but societal level as well. And I think that's a good segue to talk a little bit about how, trauma can contribute to chronic illness, because I know that you talk about this a lot as well. So can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. So trauma is actually, and stress being the precursor to trauma, right? Extreme stress, leading to traumatic retention and then traumatic responses and trauma. But all of it has been deeply connected and tied to physical disease on multiple levels, and by so many studies now that they're innumerable. There's so many ways in which the experience of trauma and like retaining that in one's body can lead to cardiovascular complications. And there's, even like stress-induced heart attacks that come directly from the experience of trauma, right? There are ways in which our gastrointestinal tract actually gets impacted by long-term chronic trauma. And I can unpack that even further. Like specifically IBS, like irritable bowel syndrome, has been known to almost look the same as like gastrointestinal issues that are trauma-based, right? And so sometimes it's people medicate with medications for IBS, when in reality, what's happening in their bodies is that their bodies are circulating trauma. And when our bodies are in survival mode, our gastrointestinal tract doesn't operate the same because it's in fight or flight mode, and it's actually not considered to be an essential function for our survival. So what happens is that gastro tract actually contracts and shuts down, if you may, for lack of a better term, it kind of just shuts down temporarily. But if we're chronically in stress, then it's shutting down far too often. And when it's doing that, it can very much resemble IBS. And the same for autoimmune conditions, the same for, there's a stress disease connection there. And even some cancers have been mapped back to stress and chronic stress in life. So there is so much that's connected to when our bodies are in these chronic states of survival and don't have an opportunity to experience rest and ease at the deep body level, but also at the mind level, and many times even at the spirit level, then what happens is that we leave our bodies susceptible to also acquiring chronic physical illness.
Right. Yeah, I lead a workplace wellness small business, and it's just wild how we don't realize how chronic stress and unchecked stress really has can have such a negative effect on our well-being. But I think what made me think about this is you were talking about earlier about our sort of individual, collective, and societal opportunity to heal from some of this trauma, is that, we talk about just regular folks experiencing chronic stress at work, right? But then you add intergenerational trauma that we're carrying down on top of just regular work stress. And then you add the effects of, oppression on our communities and systemic inequities. And it's just a very amplified potential impact on the well-being of a lot of our communities. And I think that's what made me think about this, is like how important it is that we're doing this for ourselves, but that we realize how much us doing, as much as we can, using our platforms as we can, our voices how we can, how we are disrupting a lot of the things that have been hurting our communities, both internally, but also, externally, because it really can make a difference on how we're experiencing and carrying trauma, much beyond just the work that we do for ourselves, right?
I love how you framed that. That was beautiful. And it really speaks to intergenerational trauma work in a very wholesome way, because the thing about intergenerational trauma is that it isn't work that is just for the one person. I like to say that when we heal laterally. We heal because we're in connection with other people around us, and we show up as a more healed self. And that helps people to absorb a better version of us. Then we also heal back because many times we show up differently, you know, in our home environments, and, you know, our parents respond differently. We also send healing back to ancestors, right? Like there's all of that. And we heal forward because our descendants are now absorbing a person that has broken cycles, is not in a traumatized body, right? Or has disrupted a lot of that trauma retention, and can be more present for them and can be more conscious in their parenting. So there's so much that's happening on all levels. So really, when we're talking about intergenerational trauma healing, we're talking about thinking about the full collective. We're talking about like just our families, but we're also talking about, what about the generations to come? What about your descendants and your descendants' descendants? And the fact that those are a part of your extended community, and you may have contact with them, you may live long enough to see them, and you may not, but you will have an impact. And what kind of impact are you hoping to leave behind?
All the feels right now. I'm having all the feels. I think it's really motivating me, and hopefully our listeners as well, to keep doing this work, because it goes far beyond ourselves, and how beautiful it is to think about healing forward. And I think it was really beautiful for me imagining, you know, the descendants that I do get to meet, but even the ones that I don't, just the ripple effects of this work can be so beautiful. Yeah, so I think this conversation is hopefully really inspiring to folks that are starting to do this work, or already in the midst of this work. But one thing I wanted to touch on briefly is that this work can be hard, right? Healing can be hard. It's not always linear, and it can be really tough for folks sometimes who find themselves, you know, doing the work, but because of trauma they're carrying, or, you know, because it is work, they can perhaps regress, or some things may happen that can interrupt the work they're doing. So what are some recommendations you have for folks that are in the midst of maybe just starting to kind of gain awareness, or maybe you have already started doing some work? What recommendations do you have for folks so they can keep going?
Yes. Well, the biggest recommendation that I like to offer is for people to honor how their bodies are feeling and experiencing their trauma healing. More often than not, what we want to do, because we want to get rid of the issue, right? So we jump right into wanting to fix everything, when in reality, we get very eager, and it's wonderful that people want to heal, but the healing can actually be more complicated, or it can feel heavier when we don't have a body that feels safe. So I always urge people to get into any healing practices that can help them to feel more grounded and help their nervous system to metabolize stress a bit better. And these can be like your day-to-day types of nervous system practices, right? They can be meditation, it can be trauma-informed yoga, it can be dance movement therapy. Like I dance every single morning, you know, to a whole bunch of Spanish songs across every genre, like, because it's, you know, they're very energized songs, and I can like really move my body. So it really is about just getting yourself feeling grounded in whatever ways works for you, and then inviting in some of the process of like getting into your story and getting into the layers of trauma and getting into all those things. But the biggest thing would be settle your nervous system, help your body feel safe, and be body attuned, like body aware.
Beautiful, beautiful. Okay, so before we get into our fun questions that we like to ask our guests, is there any last message that you want to share with folks specifically about what we've been talking about today that you want to leave folks with?
Yeah, I just want people to know that it is possible to break these cycles. I know that when we're talking about something that's so heavy, so layered, so old and ancestral, and so filled with so many steps that we need to take, that it can feel really daunting and overwhelming. But we can each take a moment every single day to disrupt cycles, and the accumulation of those efforts will eventually lead you to feel lighter. So it's just about staying the course and just committing to the journey of breaking cycles and knowing that there is a light at the end of the tunnel and there is opportunity and hope, for you to be able to transition from being in a chronic state of emotional pain into feeling like your life is abundant and just, reflective of more of an intergenerational legacy than it is of intergenerational trauma.
I love that. More reflective of an intergenerational legacy than intergenerational trauma. That's powerful. Okay, so we're gonna get into our fun questions that we like to ask our guests. But first, I'm a music lover, all the Latin genres. So I'm just curious what you listen to in the morning. What are you listening to right now?
So right now, so Becky G is on heavy replay right now, because I think you get a little bit of everything. Yes. So I definitely love being able to get into a little bit of reggaeton, a little bit of dembow, anything that's like very like high energy. And then I like transition into a little bit of salsa because, I just like to move in the salsa rhythm. So there's a little variation there, but those are my favorites.
Yeah, and do you feel like you start? So do you start in the morning with a particular does your music listening kind of change throughout the day, or what does that kind of transition look like?
Yeah, because it's so variable. So actually, when I wake up, it's all of those things, and I give it at least like a good 30 minutes. So I'm making my cafecito. I'm like, just throwing in the music, singing out loud. Then I'm dancing with my dogs, and then I'm winding down so that I can get into my meetings and get ready for them. And then I'm usually going about my day. And towards the end of the evening, I tend to switch more to English, and I switch to more mellow music. Like anything that feels, like a Maxwell. So yeah, it gets a little more mellow, and especially as I start, winding down, getting my aromatherapy and ready for, the night routine, it starts feeling more like that.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, I think what you just shared, like, you're basically kind of modeling, like, what is the kind of energy that I want to feel in my body and that I need for this part of the day, and that the music you play sort of matches that. So it's like a very healing way of listening to music, which is not surprising given your profession. Yeah. Beautiful.
Yeah, I try to live by the work that I do. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So, okay, what do you want to give a matraca to today? So this is something that you're loving right now. It can be person, place, thing, concept, silly or serious.
Yes, so I love to give a matraca to Yerbitas teas, because they have these amazing tea blends Yerbitas teas are wonderful. So their tea blends are so soothing, and their packaging's lovely, and they're so catering, as a woman owned Latina owned shop, and I want to give a shout out to them.
Beautiful. All right, Yerbitas tea. We'll make sure to include the link in our notes. Okay, so how about, what do you want to put in la basura? What goes in the trash?
In the trash, toxic traits. Or like malignant toxicity. Yes. And unkindness.
Yes, double down on that. Matraca to your basura. Okay, and then lastly, what is giving you calma right now? What is keeping you grounded?
Well, my sister's love always keeps me very grounded. She's my best friend. And that, and also the fact that it's getting like warmer out. So hearing the birds chirping every morning, and I take mindful moments just listening to that. So that's been pretty nice.
Beautiful. Where are you based?
I'm in New Jersey.
Oh, okay. East Coast. Okay, well, all right. Well, I know that y'all have probably had a tough winter, but I'm in LA, and we thought we were going through it. We thought we were going through it because we had like several weeks of rain and cold, and we're just so spoiled that we didn't think we were gonna make it. But
well, from what I hear, y'all needed a little bit of that rain, so I'm glad you got it.
Yeah, for sure. Beautiful. Well, thank you so much. I just want to give you an opportunity to share with the audience, where they can find you, maybe a little bit about your what you offer. Where can folks find you and support you?
Yeah, thank you. So I'm at drmarielbuqué.com and also at dr.marielbuqué on social. And right now, my book, Break the Cycle, which is a guide to healing intergenerational trauma, is out for pre-order. And so that's a lot of where I'm centralizing like a lot of my efforts and energy, just getting the book out to community so that we can do the healing work. And yeah, so anything related to, my work or consulting, which is a lot of what I do, is on my website.
Beautiful. Well, I want to just thank you again for your time today and for your expertise and your wise contribution to the show. We appreciate you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you so much for having me.
We really enjoyed talking to Dr. Mariel Buqué. An important takeaway is really that reminder that our healing work is for us, but not only for us. Us doing this work inspires our families and our communities while we're here. But I think something that Dr. Buque called out is it can have a generational ripple effect that goes beyond us. And so I want to just quickly mention something that a friend, and actually guest of the podcast, Chris Rivas, had said once and really resonated with me. He said, when I go, what I want most is that people say that I was a good ancestor. And that really resonated with me, and I think it connects with this work. So I really wanted to just mention that really quickly. But with that, let's get into our matracas, basuras, and calmas for the week.
Okay.
So Brenda, what's your matraca this week?
My matraca is listening to my body. And I'll be specific because we're recording on Sunday. I just came back from going to Joshua Tree. The plan was for me to do a 55-mile race along with Jeff, my husband, and I carb load a little too close to the sun. Basically, the night before we had pizza, and I just felt horrible, and I just started to really feel like, oh my gosh, I'm not sure I'm ready to do this bike race. I didn't really train. And this is the deal breaker, like the thing that made me like absolutely just not do it, is that we looked and compared, and it was 15 degrees cooler last year when I did this race, and it was really hard last year. So I'm thinking, if I have to do this again and I feel horrible and it's 15 degrees hotter, I don't need to prove this anything to anyone. So I quit because my body was telling me, girl, sit this one out. So listen to your body. You don't need to do something because you signed up for it. You do not need to get the medal, although I still got it because I already paid for it and they give it to you in the front end. But you don't need that stuff. So just listening to my body is what I give a matraca to.
I love that. And you can get a participation medal even if you don't participate, apparently. But you know what? I think also, like, you listen to your body, and you also had a data point. Like, you knew that it was
I knew.
You know what I'm saying? Like, you listened to your body, and you had information that helped you make a good decision.
Yeah, right? And it was so much better. While Jeff rode his
what
bike
were you
for
doing
55
instead?
miles, I got these really cute sunglasses. I hung out in Joshua Tree. I hung out by the pool. It was wonderful. So listen to your body and celebrate your body. Give it some agua fresca in the pool.
Yes, I'm into that. You know, I'm all about listening to my body right now.
Yes.
Okay, so my matraca. You know what? I'm gonna put música regional topping the charts.
Absolutely.
In the globe, in the U.S.,
my head.
everywhere. But it's funny because remember I talked about this not that long ago. So I gave a shout out to Grupo Frontera, which is the banda group that I've been loving, and then a few weeks later, Bad Bunny does a song with them. So I feel like it's obviously I'm not the only person that's listening to banda y música.
Rarely are we. It's the algorithm, honey.
I thought
helps.
I thought it was me. I was like, dang, I'm just getting it. But apparently I'm not the only one.
TikTok,
apparently it's the whole world. We're feeling it.
All of it.
We're reconnecting. But to me, it's and then Peso Pluma, which is someone else in the música regional space. He was on Jimmy Fallon. And to me, that was huge, like to see that music be on that mainstream, because I feel like
aquí estamos y no nos vamos, y'all.
Pero estamos aquí for so long, and somehow there's still been elements of like our culture that hasn't been mainstream forever. So to finally see something like that on Jimmy Fallon, to me was a really powerful moment.
Yeah, matraca to us. Okay, let me find my phone. I want to reference. Okay,
matraca.
Continue.
Okay.
Yes, matraca.
Okay. So basura, are you ready to share your basura, or should I start?
You can go ahead, because I'm pulling it up on my phone.
Okay. My basura, y'all, hombres chismosos. Because I feel like women get the burnt of being las chismosas, but y'all, I think hombres are way more chismosos, and I'm over it. And it's really been happening to me a lot.
But now I want the tea. What made you think that?
Girl, okay, mira, es que I've been moving into my new place or whatever, so I've been having to I'm trying to support local businesses, doing a lot of things, buying a lot of shit.
Aquí in Boyle Heights.
In Boyle Heights, which is where I live, is the East LA neighborhood. And so I've been going to a lot of small businesses, and a lot of older Latino men own small businesses. And so as I've been buying my things, like, these dudes feel like they can just ask me, ¿Estás casada?
Oh, gosh.
¿Tienes hijos? ¿Vives sola? Like, y'all, like, all the things. And I'm like, I've been trying to be more kind with strangers. And I'm like, maybe this is why we can't have nice things. We can't be kind, because when we try to be nice and open to folks, they start asking you all these personal questions that make you feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, basura to those questions, which are so annoying. So
annoying. And you know what I decided? And I was still like nice, because I was just like so off put, but I was like, But I think I just get to really hold my boundaries when people ask me questions that I don't want to answer. So that's been the most recent example, but also like I've had a lot of experiences with Uber drivers asking me things, and then when I've like decided, like when they'll ask me if I have a boyfriend, and I'm like, no, actually I don't date men, or like decided to share that with them, and then anyways, I'll stop right there. I could go on and on, but anyways, hombres chismosos, go en la basura. Stop asking people personal questions. It's not okay.
No, never okay. Men are trash.
All right, Brenda, what are you putting in that basura?
Well, a couple things. The silly one is, and I think I've put this in the basura before, but just, you know what? I recently experienced it again.
Yes, you can put it again.
What is up with bathrooms that have mirrors that like reflect on you going to the bathroom? I've like this has happened recently, where there's like literally like a wall-to-wall mirror angled at the throne. Like, why would you do that? So that goes in la basura. So anyways, I don't like that. But the more serious basura goes to this. By the time you're all listening to this, I don't know what the latest update will be. But of course, every single time we record an episode, there's going to be a shooting. Like, there always is a shooting. The most recent shooting as of late was absolutely atrocious. This was a man that was firing his AK-47 or whatever, some crazy machine gun type of
that no one should have.
Yes, in his front yard. A family next door, his neighbor said, "Hey, can you keep it down? We have a baby trying to sleep." This man went to that house in execution style, killed almost the entire family, including an 8-year-old boy. It is horrible. It is part of, it's in Texas. That should come to as no surprise. It is this culture, the American culture's obsession with like, get off my lawn, even though the man was a Mexican national, with which NBC News decided to mention that twice in the article. A Mexican national, literally had to say it twice, because we have to tell on Latinos. Like, it's just, that tone is disgusting. But even worse is Greg Abbott, who tweeted, "I've announced a $500,000 reward for info on the criminal who killed 5 illegal immigrants on Friday." Who the fuck cares of their immigration status? I mean, complete garbage. This is Republicans will stop at nothing to show off how racist they are. And this is just a flex for him. In fact, I wouldn't be surprised if people that like Greg Abbott want to honor this man for killing a family. Anyways, just complete disgusting trash, basura forever.
Wow. That is horrible. To dehumanize the lives of folks while, oh my God. I'm...
It's completely vile. And I mean, not so much before that. The families, the victims of the families of Uvalde waited for over 12 hours to testify. I mean, Texas, so much love to the people of Texas, so much love to the many communities that have to live in that environment, because it is absolutely disgusting and vile and always worthy of a trash can forever. Greg Abbott, you live there forever.
Oh man. That was hard to just process right now.
Yes, and this is calma.
This is why we have calma, yes, because these things happen, but we need to find ways to just be okay.
Yes,
in the moment. Okay, so my calma.
Yes. How are we staying grounded?
My calma is getting to be recently in spaces where I can just be and feel seen and understood without having to explain myself, and just the freedom that comes with that. And I'll mention two different things. I think just being back, I've been nurturing more queer and Latino and Latina friendships. And that just the not having to explain yourself, like people understanding different like contexts and things like that has been feeling really nice for me. So I feel grateful to get to nurture those friendships here in LA. And then the second thing is I want to give a shout out to Me Too. So I've gotten to work from their Me Too studios. They've been really kind. They allowed me to come in a few days to just co-work from there. Yeah, actually, you'll catch me on a little segment that they're doing called Spill the Chisme, which, oh my God, girl, I'm kind of nervous about that. So I'll tell the audience what it is. No, I can tell you what it is. Basically what the show is there's 3 rounds, and you ask whoever you're doing with. And I did it with Kat Novoa, who's actually was a guest of the pod. She is the founder of Babes of Wellness. She's awesome, also queer. So it was like it was like sort of queer oriented, the questions were. But we asked each other questions, and there's 3 rounds. There's like the easy round, the medium round, and the hardest round. And if you don't want to answer the question, you have to take a bite of a chile.
and I know you're kind of shy, so did you eat a lot of chile that day?
I ate a lot of chile because I got a lot of the hard questions, Brenda, and she did not. They gave me all the questions that I just didn't feel like was appropriate for me to answer.
Oh my.
and so each round, so you start with a jalapeno, then you go to a serrano, and then you end with an habanero.
Of course.
So I ate a lot of chiles. Luckily, y'all, obviously I'm Mexican and I was living in Mexico, so my tolerance is high. So I ate an habanero, no problem, to not spill the chisme.
All right, can't wait.
But
to
anyway,
hear
so y'all will see that. But anyways, I've gotten to also co-work out of there, and that's been really beautiful. And it's like, what I realized is I've never been in a space like that. I've never been in a space that was largely Latino, Latine, that had so many queer folks, where I could speak like myself, I could speak Spanglish, and that is totally understood. Like there's no code switching at all. And also to have so many folks that are just creative, and I'm just really drawn to that kind of energy. So I was like, I've never been in a workspace like that, and it feels so special and so free, and what a blessing to be able to do that. So just, even though I'm like a squatter, I'm like I don't work for them, but it still felt really nice to be there anyways, and it was like very touching to get to do. I don't know, Brenda, have you felt like you've been in a workspace where you feel that way?
Yes, because I got to work for the National Council de la Raza, who's now called Unidos US, but yes, that was one of the most wonderful things of working for a Latino civil rights organization, is just being in a space where we're all aligned, we're all fighting for the same thing. So I've been very fortunate to be in those spaces, to go to the conferences. That's the feeling that you have, the no code switching, and we're all rowing the boat in the same direction. We're going to make this place a better place so that people can feel that way, can feel like they could be themselves wherever they are. So yes, I've been lucky to have that space, and I'm so glad that you've been able to do more of that. And this space is what this space is.
Right.
This podcast is.
Yeah, we do that with the podcast.
Yeah,
for all of y'all. So from wherever you are. Anyway, so yeah, really special. But with that, anything else you want to share, Brenda?
I'll share my calma of the week.
Oh, yeah, your calma.
My calma of the week was that even though I decided to not do the bike race, I decided to still ride my bike. So I rode my bike for an hour while Jeff did the bike race, and that was really wonderful, really freeing to do it in Joshua Tree, to just have like the wind blowing in my face and just the beautiful scenery. So just doing solo things is my calma.
Beautiful. All right, y'all. Well, with that, we'll leave you, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah, please, everybody, we've asked you all the time, but we can't stress it enough. We really appreciate when you take the time to write us an Apple Podcast review. Please, it means so much to us. When you share an episode with a friend, we would love to continue to grow and we need your help. And also, if you feel so inclined, we of course always accept contributions. And all of that is at tamarindopodcast.com. Thank you so much, y'all.
Thank you. Abrazos, besos.
Ciao.
Ciao.
Tamarindo Podcast is Brenda Gonzalez and Ana Sheila Victorino, with production support from Josie Melendez and Augusto Martinez Delgado of Sonoro Media. Our theme song is by Jeff Ricards. If you like our show, please rate and review Tamarindo Podcast or share an episode with a friend.